Hello, and welcome to the inaugural episode of the Castro Files.
Hey, honey.
Hi, I am Beth Lamontagne. This is my husband, Greg Lamontagne. And we're excited to do some new stuff for you guys with some great stories, some scary, some mysterious,
some
creepy,
fun, entertaining,
from all over,
things.
right? From like all over the world is what our goal is.
That's the goal.
Yeah,
absolutely. So, what's in it for the listeners? Since this is the first one we've done, right? What do you think is in it for the listeners?
Hopefully just some fun and some
creepy,
eerie, goosebumpy feelings from these stories.
You guys probably
get away from your day to day.
Maybe some of you have had some creepy stories. These are stories that are often called like evergreen stories, where they're.
What does evergreen mean?
Evergreen is basically they're tried and true. Like they've been around for a long time. So sometimes we'll come up with our own stories, or we'll have our own stories,
right?
And we have those from time to time. But
we'll also have stories that others have shared.
Some of our favorites that we've heard oftentimes on maybe other podcasts, or we've heard the stories, or we've gone, you've read about them and stuff like that. And we want to definitely share that with you guys. So the whole purpose of this is we love creepy stories.
We do.
We love
we love creepy movies, paranormal stuff, shows, tours, anything basically we can get our hands on is kind of
ghost hunting. We do it all. We
like
try and do it all. And we've been to some pretty creepy places.
Right.
We were just recently up in New Braunfels, stayed at a creepy place, went to a creepy bar there, the
Haunted Saloon, correct.
And we've stayed in Estes. What is it?
Estes Park.
Stanley
Hotel.
Hotel.
Yep.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's basically that kind of thing. It's really fun. We love this stuff. And
so we figured if we like it that much, we may start bringing some to people who like it too.
It with you guys as well. So we're going to go over. Generally, we'll have maybe one or two stories. Maybe
depends on the story.
A third or something like that.
Yep.
But yeah, try and creep each other out. Try and find some of them. The story I'm going to tell tonight is called The Watcher. Mm-hmm. It is one of the...
It's a great story.
Creepier stories. These are longer format, kind of like creepy stories.
We've heard this one before and it creeped us both out.
Yeah. And it literally is one of my favorites. Yeah. What's your story tonight?
Mine is about a ghost called Betty.
A ghost called Betty.
And it takes place in Odessa, which is West Texas.
Okay.
So I'll share some of that stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah, when we get there.
So who's starting tonight?
You are, babes.
I'm starting tonight?
Yep.
All right. So cheers. Thank you guys so much for joining. So these are stories that other people have written, so we're definitely going to give credit to the writers.
Correct.
The story that I'm going to read tonight, excuse me, is from the New York. It's off of thecut.com, and the writer is Reeves Weideman. So, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. This is from November 19th, 2018 is when this story was written. So, one night in June 2014, Derek Brodus had just finished an evening of painting at his new home in Westfield, New Jersey, when he went outside to check the mail. Derek and his wife, Maria, had closed on a 6-bedroom house at 657 Boulevard 3 days earlier. That's the address. If you Google that address, you're going to find
more info.
Pictures.
Okay.
Here's a picture to give you reference. If you're listening only on the audio version of this, which it'll be out on iTunes and all that stuff, I'll post all the pictures out. So this is 657 Boulevard.
It's a pretty house.
Yeah, very pretty. So they had closed on the house 3 days earlier and were doing some renovations before they moved in. So there wasn't much in the mail except for a few bills and a white card-shaped envelope. It was addressed in thick, clunky handwriting to the quote-unquote new owner. And the typed note inside began warmly, "Dearest new neighbor at 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood." Kind of,
I mean, normal so far.
Kind of not. Normally people come over with like...
Well, maybe they're just shy. I mean, it's not abnormal
like
as of yet.
A fruit cake or something, maybe.
Right. Right.
Probably.
Keep going, bro.
This goes. For the Brutuses, buying 657 Boulevard had fulfilled a dream. Maria was raised in Westfield, and the house was a few blocks from her childhood home. Derek grew up working class in Maine, then moved his way up the ladder at an insurance company in Manhattan to become a senior vice president with a salary large enough to afford a $1.3 million house.
Wasn't no cheap house.
Nope. The Brutuses had bought 657 just after Derek celebrated his 40th birthday, and their 3 kids were already debating which of the house's fireplaces Santa Claus would use.
Okay.
Cute enough. But as Derek kept reading the letter from his new neighbor, it took a turn. Question from the writer: how did you end up here? Did 657 call to you? With its force within? The letter went on. The author's reconnaissance had apparently already begun. The letter identified the Brutus's Honda minivan as well as workers renovating the home. I see that you already have flooded 657 with contractors so that you can destroy the house as it was supposed to be, the person wrote. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Bad move. You don't want to make 657 Boulevard unhappy. Earlier in the week, Derek and Maria had gone to the house and chatted with their new neighbors while their children, who were 5, 8, and 10, ran around the backyard with several kids from the neighborhood. The letter writer seemed to have noticed. You have children. I've seen them.
Okay, now that's creepy.
So far, I think there are 3 that I've counted, the anonymous correspondent wrote, before asking if there were more on the way. Do you feel the need? Do you need to fill the house with young blood? I requested. Better for me. Was your old house too small for the growing family, or was it greed to bring me your children? Once I know their names, I will call to them, and I will draw them too.
Okay, now it's getting not kind of weird. Pretty flippin' weird.
Story again it's creepy.
It is creepy.
This is a real story.
True story. Yep.
The envelope had no return address. Who am I? The person wrote. There are hundreds and hundreds of cars that drive by 657 Boulevard each day. Maybe I am in one. Look out any of the many windows in 657 Boulevard at all the people who stroll by each day. Maybe I'm one of them. The letter concluded with the suggestion that this message would not be the last. Welcome, my friends. Welcome. Let the party begin. Followed by a signature typed in cursive font, The Watcher. It was after 10 p.m. when Derek Brutus was alone. He raced around the house, turning off all the lights so no one could see inside, then called Westfield Police Department. An officer came to the house, read the letter, and said, "The fuck is this?"
Seriously?
All right. He asked Derek if he had any enemies and recommended moving a piece of construction equipment from the back porch in case the Watcher tried to toss it through his window. I mean,
okay,
certain things.
Right.
Derek rushed back to his wife and kids who were living at their old home elsewhere in Westfield. That night, Derek and Maria wrote an email to John and Amanda Woods, the couple who sold them the house, to ask if they had any idea who the Watcher might or who might be or why he or she had written. I asked the Woods to bring me young blood, and it looks like they listened.
Oh, I didn't hear that part in the letter. So he literally said he asked the people living there prior to bring in young blood. Okay.
Andrea Woods replied the next morning, a few days before moving out. The Woodses also had received a letter from the Watcher. Their note had been odd, she said, and made similar mention of the Watcher's family observing the house over time. But Andrea said she and her husband never had received anything like it in their 23 years of living in the house, and had thrown away the letter without much thought. That day, the Woodses went with Maria to the police station where Detective Leonard Lugo told her not to tell anyone about the letters, including their neighbors, most of whom she had never met, and all of whom were now suspects.
Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, basically.
You're calling yourself the Watcher.
So many people,
and they're catching all these things that are happening
around you that you're like,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. The Brutuses spent the coming weeks on high alert. Derek canceled a work trip And whenever Maria took the kids to their new house, she would yell their names if they wandered to a corner of the yard, like, get back
Billy,
here.
get back here.
Yeah. When Derek gave a tour of the renovation to a couple on the block, he froze when the wife said, "It'll be nice to have some young blood in the neighborhood." This is
very similar to the letter.
Yeah, exactly. The Brutus's general contractor arrived one morning to find that a heavy sign he'd hammered into the front yard had been ripped out overnight. 2 weeks after the letter arrived, Maria stopped by the house to look at some paint samples and check the mail. She recognized the thick black lettering on the card-shaped envelope and called the police. "Welcome again to your new home at 657 Boulevard," the watcher wrote. The workers have been busy, and I've been watching you unload carfuls of your personal belongings. The dumpster's a nice touch. Have they found what is in the walls yet? In time they will. This time, the watcher had addressed Derek and Maria directly, misspelling their names, Mr. and Mrs. Bratis. Miscorrectly spelling their name. Had the watcher been close enough to hear one of the Brutises, it's Broaduses,
Okay.
yeah, as opposed to Bratis.
Right.
Contractors addressing them, the watcher boasted of having learned a lot about the family in the preceding weeks, especially about their children. The letter identified the Brutus's 3 kids by birth order and by their nicknames.
Oh, creepy.
Somebody's close enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
You have to think it's like at the general vicinity. So, like, literally, you're like, do I be nice to these people? Or
are there bugs in the house? Are there microphones?
Yeah. How are they getting this information?
Yeah, right? Like, how do you get that? Like, if I were to call you Castro.
Right. And then
the Castro Files, right? Like, how do people know that?
I mean, you call it out pretty loud, but it's people.
But it's only certain people that would know something like that, right? So you certainly say their names often. The letter asked about one of the children in particular, whom the writer had seen using an easel inside the enclosed porch. Is she an artist in the family? The letter continued, 657 Boulevard is anxious for you to move in. It has been years and years since the young blood ruled the hallways of the house. Have you found all of the secrets it holds yet? Will the young blood play in the basement, or are they too afraid to go down there alone?
Yeah, now they are.
I would be very afraid if I were them. It is far away from the rest of the house. If you were upstairs, you would never hear them scream. Will they sleep in the attic, or will you all sleep on the second floor? Who has the bedrooms facing the street? I'll know as soon as you move in. It will help me know who is in which room. Then I can plan better. All of the windows and doors in 657 Boulevard allow me to watch you and track you as you move in the house. Who am I? I am the watcher, and I have been in control of 657 Boulevard for the better part of 2 decades now. The Woods family turned it over to you. It was their time to move, and kindly sold it when I asked them to. I pass by many times a day. 657 Boulevard is my job, my life, my obsession. And now you too, Brutus family, welcome to the product of your greed. Greed is what brought the past 3 families to 657 Brutus, and now it has brought you to me. Have a happy moving day. You know I'll be watching. I just got the chills, dude.
That's creepy.
I just got literally
got the willies.
I got the willies. I literally just got the willies. Imagine that.
Nope.
Fuck. Derek and Maria stopped bringing their kids to the house. They were no longer sure when or if they would move in. Several weeks later, a 3rd letter arrived. Where have you gone? The watcher wrote. 657 Boulevard is missing you. Sorry. Many of Westfield residents compare their town to Mayberry, the idyllic setting for the Andy Griffith Show. Like, this shouldn't necessarily happen. Westfield is 45 minutes from New York, a bit too slow for singles, meaning the town's 30,000 residents are largely well-to-do families. So it's pretty close. We were talking about some of this stuff earlier, right? The watcher, there's some other websites and stuff like that have tracked this over the years, and nobody to this day knows who it is.
Right.
So we'll get into this here. The letters did indicate proximity. They had been processed in Kearney, the U.S. Postal Service Postal Services distribution center in North New Jersey. The first was postmarked June 4th before the sale was even public. So somebody knew that house was being sold to
that
these
was
people
under contract
before it was even public, because you know how that goes.
Yeah.
The Woodses had never even put up a sign for sale. Only a day after the contractors arrived is when they put it up for sale. They were doing work on it, renovating.
Why would you put it for sale if it's already sold?
Well, they were renovating.
Oh, the old owners were renovating, not the new owners.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. The renovations were mostly interior. The people who lived nearby say they didn't notice any unusual commotion, even from jackhammering in the basement. When Derek and Maria walked Detective Lugo around the house, they showed him that the easel on the porch was hidden from the street by vegetation, making it even more difficult to see unless someone was behind the house or right next door. There was no angle that you could see just
from
walking.
The front of the house.
Yeah, just walking, right? A few days after the first letter, Maria and Derek went to a barbecue across the street, welcoming them and another new homeowner to the block. The Broadduses hadn't told anyone about the watcher, and the police had instructed, and found themselves scanning the party for clues while keeping tabs on their kids, who ran guilelessly, just kind of haphazardly.
Yeah, they're being kids.
Through the crowd and made up much of the suspect pool. We kept screaming at them to stay close, Maria said. People must have thought we were crazy. At one point, Derek was chatting with John Schmidt, who lived 2 doors down, when Schmidt told him about the Langfords, who lived between them. Peggy Langford was in her 90s, and several of her children, all in their 60s, lived with her, which is a bit odd, right?
Right.
Schmidt said, but harmless. He described one of the younger Langfords, Michael, who didn't work and had a beard like Ernest Hemingway's, as a kind of Boo Radley character.
Yeah.
Derek thought the case was solved. The Langfords' house was right next to the easel on the porch. The family had lived there since the 60s when the watcher's father, when the watcher's father, the letter said, had begun observing 657. So that family had been there since the 60s.
Okay.
Right? Watcher's father, presumably.
Okay.
So Richard Langford, who was the watcher's father, the family patriarch, had died 12 years earlier, and the current watcher claimed to have been on the job for a better part of 2 decades. Timelines kind of match up.
Right.
When the Broadduses told Lugo about the family, he said he already knew, and a week after the first letter arrived, he brought Michael Langford to the police headquarters for an interview. Michael denied knowing anything about the letters, but the Broadduses say that Lugo told him that the narrative of what he said matched things mentioned in their letters. This isn't CSI Westfield, Lugo told the Broadduses. When the wife is dead, it's the husband, right? Generally speaking. Generally speaking.
Right.
Not all the time, but sometimes, right? But there wasn't much hard evidence. That was the problem. After a few weeks, the police chief told the Broadduses that, short of an admission, there wasn't much the department could do. This is someone who threatened my kids, and the police are saying probably nothing's gonna happen, Derek said. Probably isn't good enough. After the second letter, Derek told the cops that if they didn't take care of the situation, that they would have a different kind of case on their hands. This person attacked my family, and from where I'm from, if you do that, you get your ass beat, right?
Right.
Like, even if you
come at me,
I'm coming
back. Yeah.
Right. Frustrated, the Broadduses began their own investigation. Derek became especially obsessed. He set up webcams at 657 Boulevard and spent nights crouched in the dark watching to see if anybody was watching the house at close range. Could you imagine that? Like, just looking out of every window.
Nope.
Trying to see, like, lights off.
Right.
Just watching to see if somebody's coming, like, walking by. Like, how, like, come on. Right? Maria thought I was crazy. He told me recently at a coffee shop in Manhattan, where he covered the table with documents relating to the case, including copies of the letters, which he and his wife had shared with only a few friends and family members. He showed me a map displaying when each of 657 neighbors had moved in. The Langfords were the only ones there since the 60s. with overlaying markings,
Constant.
possible sight lines for the easel, and a circle of approximate range of earshot to estimate who might have heard Maria yelling their kids' names. Only a few homes fit the criteria. The Broadduses also turned to several experts. They employed a private investigator who staked out the house, ran background checks on the Langfords, and didn't find anything noteworthy. Derek reached out to a former FBI agent who served as the inspiration for the Clarice Starling, the Silence of the Lambs, right? They were on high school boards of trustees together, and they also hired Robert Linehan, another former FBI agent, to conduct a threat assessment. Linehan recognized several old-fashioned ticks in the letters that pointed to an older writer.
Okay.
The envelope was addressed to M/M Broaddus. The salutations included the day's weather, warm and humid, sunny and cool for a summer, and the sentences had double spaces between them. The letters had a certain literary panache, which suggested a voracious reader like you. You're always trying to correct me on stuff. And surprising lack of profanity given the level of anger, which Linehan thought meant a less macho writer. Maybe he wondered the Watcher had seen The Watcher, starring Keanu Reeves as a serial killer who stalks the detective trying to catch him.
Oh, okay.
Linehan didn't think the Watcher was likely to act on the threats, but the letters had enough typos and errors to imply a certain erraticism. The first letter was dated Tuesday, June 4th, but that day was a Wednesday. There was also a seething anger directed at the wealthy in particular. The Watcher was upset by new money moving into town. Are you one of the Hoboken transplants who are ruining Westfield? And by the Broadduses, relatively modest renovations. The house is crying from all of the pain it is going through. You have changed it and made it so fancy. You are stealing its history. It cries for the past and what used to be in the time when I roamed its halls. The 1960s were a good time for 657 Boulevard, when I ran from room to room imagining the life with the rich occupants here. The house was full of life and young blood. Then it got old, and so did my father. But he kept watching until the day he died. And now I watch and wait for the day when the young blood will be mine again.
Yikes.
Linehan recommended looking into the former housekeepers, the descendants, anybody that was connected with this house, right? But the focus remained on the Langfords, the next door neighbors.
Right.
Right. In cooperation with the Westfield police, the Broadduses sent a letter to the Langfords announcing plans to tear down the house, hoping to prompt a response to kind of egg them on.
Right.
Right. And nothing happened. Detective Lugo brought Michael Langford in for a second interview, but got nowhere, and his sister Abby accused the police of harassing their family. Eventually, the Broadduses hired Lee Levitt, a lawyer who met with several members of the Langford family, as well as their attorney, to show them the letters, along with photos explaining how their home was one of the few vantage points from which they could see that easel,
right,
in front of their house. The meeting grew tense, Levitt told me, and the Langfords insisted Michael was innocent. One night, Derek had a dream in which he confronted Peggy, the eldest Langford, and demanded she built an 8-foot fence between the properties. Maria was having other kinds of dreams. One night, she woke up to an especially vivid one about a man who lived nearby. He was wearing these boots and carrying a pitchfork and calling to the kids, and I couldn't get to them in time. Maria said she thought almost anyone could be the Watcher. So it's starting to get psychological on him, right? Starting to wear at him, right?
Yeah.
So she probed the faces of the shoppers at Trader Joe's to see if they looked strangely at her kids or her, and to spend hours Googling anyone who seemed suspicious.
Okay.
Which I would do,
I mean, yeah.
I'd be like, I would literally be Googling everyone in the neighborhood.
Oh, you'd be crazy.
Who's this person? Who's this person? We already have cameras all over our house. Yeah. I'd be like on those things all day long, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you just got to be like, what? There are reasons to consider other suspects. For one thing, the police spoke to Michael before his second letter was sent, which would make sending two more letters especially reckless. The Broadduses said that Lugo told them that they wouldn't receive any more letters after he spoke to Michael. Then there was the rest of the neighborhood to consider. The private investigator found 2 child sex offenders within blocks. Always scary.
Right.
Bill Woodward, the Broadduses' house painter, had also noticed something strange. The couple behind 657 Boulevard kept a pair of lawn chairs strangely close to the Broadduses' property. One day I was looking out the window and I saw this older guy sitting in one of the chairs, Woodward told me. He was facing his house. He was facing, I think it was a mistype. He was facing his house. He wasn't facing his house. He was facing the Broadduses.
So he wasn't looking at his house. He was looking that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
But by the end of 2014, the investigation stalled, and the watcher had left no digital trail, no fingerprints, and no way of placing someone at the scene of the crime, so to speak. The renovations to 657, including a new alarm system, were finished within a few months. But the idea of moving in filled the Broadduses with overwhelming anxiety.
Dread, seriously, yeah.
Could they let their kids play outside or have friends over? Would they get a new letter every week? Derek priced out trained German shepherds and posted a job on a website for military veterans. All you have to do is work out in the backyard every day. Just work out in the backyard. He just wanted some level of security there, right?
Right.
I mean,
I just need you to be around.
Just be around and just work out.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit what you do, right?
Read your book.
Do whatever. Just be a big
knit your
menacing
scarves,
person and just hang out, right?
Yeah.
But the Broadduses hadn't bought 657 to feel bunkered in a fortress. At the end of the day, it came down to, what are you willing to risk, Maria told me. We weren't going to put our kids in harm's way. We weren't going to risk putting our kids in harm's way. Derek had been responding to the occasional alarms at the house, sometimes in the middle of the night, bringing a knife with him just in case, because they're still staying at the other place while they're doing all these renovations, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were so joyous about their new home, and then within days they were petrified.
Yeah, that would suck.
I'm a stranger, and Maria was crying and shaking in my arms. It didn't help that the watcher seemed to be getting more and more unhinged. 657 Boulevard is turning on me. So, letter from
the watcher.
The watcher. It is coming after me. I don't understand why. What spell did you cast on it? It used to be my friend, and now it's my enemy. I'm in charge of 657. It is not in charge of me. I will fend off its bad things and wait for it to become good again. It will not punish me. I will rise again. I will be patient and wait for this to pass, and for you to bring the young blood back to me. 657 Boulevard needs young blood. It needs you. Come back. Let the young blood play again. I once did. Let the young blood sleep in 657 Boulevard. Stop changing it and let it alone. The young blood thing here is creepy.
And he does sound totally like it's changing on me. It's coming after me.
It's definitely changing. It's creepy.
Yeah.
All right. So the Broadduses had sold their home, so they moved into Maria's parents while continuing to pay the mortgage at and property taxes at 657 Boulevard, right? I had to do things like shovel the driveway, just picture that little indignity. They weren't living there.
They were taking care of it, but they weren't living there.
They were like property managers, but no rent tenants.
They needed to get tenants.
Said, I was so depressed. I was a depressed wreck, Derek said. Maria decided to see a therapist after routine doctor's visits that began with the question, how are you? Caused her to burst into tears. The therapist said she was suffering post-traumatic stress that wouldn't go away until they got rid of the house. 6 months after the letters arrived, the Broadduses decided to sell 657 Boulevard. They initially listed it for more than they paid to reflect renovations they had done, but few worlds are more gossipy than suburban New Jersey real estate, and rumors had already begun to swirl about why the house sat empty. One broker emailed to say her client loved it, but there's so many unsubstantiated rumors flying about, right? ranging from sexual predators to stalkers. That they need to know more. The Broadduses sent a partial disclosure mentioning that letters to interested buyers and told Coldwell Banker, their realtor, that they intended to show full letters to anyone whose offer was accepted. Several preliminary bids came in well below asking price, but the Broadduses weren't ready to take such a financial hit, right?
Yep.
So, buy it for over $1 million. Like,
right. You sold it for, you bought it for 1.8. You don't really want to take 750.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So my friend got a horrible threatening. Let me go back. A Coldwell agent who hadn't read the letters told them in an email that they were being unnecessarily forthcoming. My friend got a horrible threatening letters about her dog barking, and she didn't think to disclose. But the Broadduses insisted, "I don't know how you lived through what we did and think you could do it to somebody else." I don't know where that came from.
Well, the agent saying you don't have to, because it's true.
Oh yeah.
You don't have to. Like, I got horrible letters because of my dog barking, but I didn't tell that to the person who moved in after me.
You know, I mean, it's like, what are you gonna do? Like,
right?
Tough shit. Like, we have dogs, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the Broadduses felt that the name alone was ominous enough to merit mentioning to a new family that were moving in. I'm sorry. Let me
Yeah,
go
but the
back.
family before them didn't mention they got a letter.
Right. So yeah, exactly. Derek and Maria thought about what they were. I skipped a paragraph.
Fine.
Derek and Maria thought about what they would have done had the previous owners told them about their letter from the
Exactly.
Watcher.
That's what I just said. That's crazy.
Woodses, both retired scientists, told the Broadduses that they remembered the letter they received as more of strange and threatening, thanking them for taking care of the house. They say that they never had any issues. We certainly never felt watched, Andrea told them, and they rarely even locked the doors. But the Broadduses felt the name alone was ominous enough to merit mentioning to new family moving in. And on June 2nd, 2015, after a year after buying 657 Broadduses, they filed a legal complaint against the Woodses, arguing that the Woodses should have disclosed that the letter, just as they had the fact that water sometimes got into the basement. So they should have.
Right.
It's kind of like some states you aren't required to tell
You're
them,
not. Like if somebody passes away in a house, Phoenix, Arizona is one of them.
It was, right? Yeah. And like, if
you have to do your due diligence on the house.
You kind of got to do a little homework,
Yeah.
right? It's you never know. And if
Right.
if you're not comfortable with that, like, you almost need to like build a new house or something.
Right. If you don't want any history in your house.
Yeah, in like some places in Texas.
Do a new build, or
a
custom, or rebuild. I mean, a new build or custom or whatever.
Like, you see the picture, that's an older house, right?
It's a great house though.
Yeah, maybe there's some history to it. Maybe
Yeah,
you want to know, right? So basically the Broadduses felt the same, like I said. They filed legal complaint, like I said.
Mm-hmm.
The Broadduses say that they hope to reach a quiet settlement. Their kids still didn't know anything about the Watcher, and their lawyer assured them that at most a small legal news wire might pick up the story. Well, it's gone viral, global, right? It's all over. You can find this story everywhere. They eventually rented the property out.
Okay.
And it continues. There haven't been more stories about it,
right?
But when you go into it and
that anyone's talking about anyways.
Yeah, and it's one of those stories that I've thought about, and it's come up several times.
They've never found out, right?
Nobody still knows.
And they never got any more letters when they started renting it out?
After they got it from here, yeah.
Okay.
They couldn't find, they did all sorts of DNA analysis on the letters. They did fingerprints on
There was nothing.
There was nothing. Yeah. So it says the Broadduses were stunned. They had recently told the prosecutors that they plan to file civil charges against the Langfords, the next door neighbors, but nothing ever
came. They didn't have anything.
There's no suspects left. So you go who were the people watching?
Well, and did they have cameras outside?
First thing I'm going to do,
right,
is if you can see my house as well as I can, I'm going to literally walk around and be like, how can you see this? Where can you see this from?
I'm going to put cameras. I'm going to put cameras in every angle where you cover. But here's the thing. So those things cover our houses. They don't face the street. So you don't see what's happening in the street. You see what's happening to your house. But
Like those
what
cameras,
I'm
like from
saying
the
is,
watcher's
though, like they
perspective.
put this in the mailbox.
But wouldn't you expect to see like something on a tree? Like a camera, like a what?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I get what you're saying. That person's not physically there, but they've established
Right. There's
cameras
got to be
that
some. You're
allows them to
thinking
see
like
at the
this is like
house.
James Bond kind of
Right.
stuff,
But at the same time, though, from my perspective, if I have cameras on my house, which if I got these letters, I would totally put one on my mailbox
Yeah.
and be like, okay, who every day I'm checking 24 hours worth of
That's
footage.
That's why they end up having PTS and stuff like that, post-traumatic stress, because you're like, how are they?
Right.
How are they?
I've got
watching
to find this. Yeah.
Like, are they in my Wi-Fi? Are they in my system? Are they in my security?
Are they looking at me through my own laptop camera?
You know, like you want to, like, there's a laptop over here because obviously we're doing the show,
right?
But you're like, do I put the sticky
like
notes
even on
over...
your iPads and shit?
Yeah.
They all have cameras
How
where
are they
hackers can get into and see what you're doing.
know?
Yeah.
And if they've been doing
So
it
it's so
for
sad. They
years...
never lived there, huh? Did they finally sell it?
I didn't, as of this one, it didn't say. Let me scroll. Hang on one second.
Because we know they got the renter.
They had upgraded the house from, let me see. Some locals found it noteworthy that over the course of a decade, the Broadduses upgraded from a $315,000 house to $770 to a 1.3 and refinanced from mortgages. They were just, other people are digging into their backgrounds and stuff like that. Right. But it doesn't necessarily
say what ultimately happened.
Yeah, in here. If you dig, if you pull the story,
you could find it.
Yeah. Some people, question it, is it like a ploy,
right,
to draw more people to the house,
to like make it
creepier than it was? But why would the prior owners have had that letter? Like any letter?
Why would they have gotten a letter
at all?
Right. If they were the instigators of this new creep factor, why would the old ones? But here's the question: did they already know they were going to buy it, and could they have sent it to those people when they still lived there?
Well, there's that, right?
But if I remember correctly, like they did a pretty extensive investigation into the family and ruled them. They ruled them like they weren't involved in any way other than being the center of the attacks, if you will.
Yep. So it's very interesting. Go check it out. 657 Broadmoor. You can Google it. It's all over the place.
Nice.
You can find it.
Very cool.
Creepy story. One of those ones that we heard coming down from Colorado on Scared to Death podcast.
Or one of them. It was Scared to Death, but
and I'll post the link, of course, once we post out the show. I'll post the link to the story. You guys can dig through it.
Yeah.
More. There's a lot. It's 38 pages long, so it's a lot.
I think that was a good story for a first episode.
It's creepy. What's yours? Yeah. What's your story?
Mine is not nearly as long.
But yours is just, it's interesting.
It is interesting.
It's a Texas story.
It is a Texas story. So it is an article I found about a ghost called Betty on Sword and Scale, which was written on June 14th of 2017.
All right.
In my research, though, I did find that it's a big enough story that like the Texas Monthly also did an article on it. So, I mean, it's got some publicity going. So at Odessa High School in West Texas, stories of the ghost of Betty Williams circulate wildly, gathering momentum with each new year and high school intake. The school's auditorium was her favorited place, where she once was a student and a flourishing actress dreaming of Broadway success. Faces appearing in windows, flickering lights, strange noises, and objects that mysteriously move are all attributed. Oh crap! What'd I do? Are all attributed to the presence of Betty. For those who don't know the tale, there are myths of how Betty died from innocent accidents at the school to onstage theatrics that went horribly wrong. But the truth is much more grisly. So, on March 22nd, 1961, 17-year-old Betty Williams disappeared. She had gone to bed as usual, as her parents knew, but come morning, Betty was gone. A friend of Betty's, Ike Nail, had driven her home from a drama rehearsal the night before, as he told police, dropping her off at her house around 10 p.m. Betty had asked him to return an hour later and met her in the alleyway behind her house. He duly complied, and Betty climbed into his car dressed in her pajamas, telling him she had sneaked out of her house without her parents' knowledge. So she'd snuck out.
Okay.
There is a picture that I sent you.
Yep, they didn't come through.
I also texted it to you.
I know.
Of Betty and Betty and somebody else.
I'll post.
So Betty Williams grew up in the suburbs of Odessa with her parents and 3 younger siblings. Her father was a carpenter who was deeply religious, a Baptist who warned his daughter about sin and damnation and worried greatly about her direction in life and her chosen behavior. Betty Williams liked to stand out from the crowd, enjoying antics that gained her attention and allowed her voice to have her opinions. Although confident, Betty was a young girl who wanted acceptance amongst her peers and would watch the popular, wealthy, and beautiful girls enjoy their parties, gatherings, wishing she too would be invited to join.
This is one of those.
So yeah,
sounds like Back to the Future, kind of like old school. What year was
1960.
Yeah, this is definitely like
19 when she came up missing. It was 61.
Okay.
Let's see, where was I? Okay. In 1960, she began dating Mac Herring, a local boy who attended the same school. Mac was a boy who fitted in with the crowd, a popular member of the school football team. He grew up in a more affluent area of town than Betty and was a fan of hunting, often spending his weekends out with his rifle. Mac was a sophomore and Betty was a junior when they first became friends, and when their relationship turned romantic, Betty seemed to have fallen hard for the new boyfriend in her life, but Mac appeared hesitant to fully embrace her. He didn't invite her to parties. He didn't tell his friends about her. He didn't advertise the time he spent with her. Betty embarked on a liaison with one of Mac's friends, something Mac discovered and wasn't happy about. Soon he called the romance off and started a relationship with another girl already in the popular circle.
Oh, so was she the nerdy girl?
She was the dirty secret.
Oh.
No, in the other articles I read, she wasn't the nerdy girl. She was less affluent.
I can't find the picture right this
She was less affluent. She was a little bit more wild in her ways. So, she was kind of more of like a pariah, if you will, in that time.
Which sucks. She was just there to have fun and hang out.
Right.
She's like, I want to party, bro.
I just want to.
Bro.
Right.
Back then, but.
Betty became a teen on a downward spiral, devastated over the loss of her boyfriend and feeling deserted and alone. At the time in her life, nothing seemed to be going right for her. She did not get a part in the school play when a new drama teacher, Betty felt, didn't see her potential and assigned her backstage instead. On the top of her woes, at school and in her personal life, her home life had become strained after her father discovered her diaries, which gave all the details of her sexual experiences with boys. Things a father does not want to read about his teen daughter, and certainly not a father who felt behavior was sinful. In a diary.
He was snooping.
He was snooping.
Fucking stop snooping, dads. You don't want to know the dirty, creepy stuff your kids do. I mean, at a certain age.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
And the weeks before her appearance,
like, if she's 19, stop Logan, dude.
Yeah, well, if she's 19, maybe she should be writing it in a diary.
I think that was Instagram back in the day.
It's back too.
Right?
People have diaries.
People do all sorts of weird
they call them journals now, but people still do it.
That's
in the weeks before her disappearance, Betty Williams began making comments to her friend about dying, leaving this world, and being in a better place. She told them she wanted to die and would take her own life if only she had the courage to do so. They were comments her friends did not take seriously. They collectively gave them little thought, believing they were jokes or simply comments to gain attention. Betty's expressed her wishes to end her life or laughed away, but they were wishes she intended to carry out.
That's sad.
On the day Betty Williams disappeared, police brought in Mac Herring for questioning after the statement made by Ike Nail saying he saw her last.
Who named these are old school names like Mac and Ike.
Yeah.
That's Greg.
Mac told them he picked Betty up that previous evening, but had driven her back to her parents' house around midnight, and that was the last time he'd saw her. His story was inconsistent with small details that didn't ring true, raising the suspicion of the interviewing officers. When questioned harder, he broke and told them the true story that they could hardly believe.
Okay, I'm ready for this.
Okay, hold on. I gotta take a sip.
Take a little sip. Because I'm thinking.
Well, just wait. Don't think out loud yet.
Okay.
Mac Herring had shot and killed Mac Herring had shot and killed Betty Williams because she had begged him to. He took the police to a stock pond in a secluded spot on the outskirts of the city located on some barren land.
Okay.
He told police he had shot Betty, weighted her body down, and let her sink to the bottom of the pond. At the location, Mac himself went into the water and came out dragging her body. On examination, it could clearly be seen that Betty Williams had been shot in the head at point-blank range. Mac told police Betty was delighted that he had agreed to kill her. Last thing she said to him was, "Give me a kiss to remember you by." Yeah, that's right.
What?
Betty was delighted that he agreed to kill her.
I heard you.
"Give me a kiss to remember you by," he said to her. Sorry, I left that part out. He said to her. So he asked her to kiss him so he could remember her. They kissed, and when she pulled away, she told him, "Now." Matt Herring raised the shotgun and fired, killing her instantly.
Dude.
There's another picture of the article, but we'll put that up.
Yeah, we'll post up. Okay, so let's recap real quick.
Yeah.
So he's saying that she asked him to shoot her in the head because she was sad.
She was tired of her life. Yeah.
How old is she at this point?
She was a junior, so 16, 17.
God damn, dude. I don't believe it at all.
Well, hold on. The murder of Betty Williams and its circumstances dominated the headlines in 1961, with many horrified that a young girl wanted to die and her ex-boyfriend had agreed to kill her. Young children at the time grew up hearing the stories of Betty and the rumors that her ghost now haunted the school.
Yeah.
When they entered the high school themselves, the myth resonated further. You would hear doors slamming, you would see curtains move, and nobody was there. One student, Kylie, said, "You would just hear things." As with all good ghost stories, there are many tales of encounters with Betty. "I remember hearing later on she was a ghost, and I knew who it was tied to," another student shared. "I think that people have seen an image of her in the halls."
It's creepy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is this a real,
This is real.
This is a real story.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm about to.
Okay, you're going to give us, sorry. This is a good one.
Yeah.
This is a really good one.
Yeah.
I want to say this is a really good one.
When it came to the criminal proceedings against Matt Herring, everyone expected an open and shut case. He had murdered a 17-year-old girl in cold blood and admitting to doing it, taking police straight to her body. Letters written by Betty Williams, however, were found after her death. Letters where she explained her torment and her agreement with Matt Carrington to kill her.
Okay.
"As I have only the will and not the fortitude necessary," she had written, "I pray that he will not have to suffer for what he is doing for my sake. I take upon myself all blame, for it lies alone on me only."
The fuck? Really?
Mm-hmm. And those came after.
Okay, so, but was it in...
Or they found these letters.
We need handwriting analysis. We need all of the stuff, right? Like, is it her cursive? Because back in the day, everybody wrote in cursive, right?
Was it her handwriting? The trial of Mac took place at Winkler County Courthouse in Kermit, Texas. Mac's parents hired defense attorney Warren Burnett to defend their son, who they were adamant was temporarily insane at the time he shot and killed Betty Williams. The murder by now had been dubbed the kiss and kill murderer by the media, and the tension of the case was huge.
Whoa.
On February 19th, 1962, both Warren Burnett, which was his attorney, and Dan Sullivan for the prosecution gathered in the courtroom. As far as Sullivan was concerned, this was premeditated murder, and he would be pushing for the death penalty for the now 18-year-old Matt Herring. Reporting
Texas, we have the death penalty here.
Reported in a book on the case, Washed in Blood, written by Betty's cousin, Shelton Williams. In a surprise move, Barrett did not enter a not guilty plea for his client. Instead, he introduced an affidavit from Matt Herring's father stating Mac was insane at the time of the killing. Okay. His plan was for the court to move to a sanity hearing, whereby jury would decide on sanity of Matt Herring at the time of his murder and not of his guilt or innocence.
Okay.
A verdict of insanity would mean Matt Herring would not be taken to trial for murder. It was a defense strategy that had never been done before.
Oh, it's the first time an insanity plea had been used?
Yeah. For a murder. Okay. The local reaction was mixed. Many made crude comments about Betty Williams. They said she was promiscuous and had manipulated this poor boy into killing her. Others felt, regardless of her behavior,
feel that way.
Yeah. I mean, you hear those things about kids that bully people on Facebook, that somebody telling them they should be dead, they should kill themselves, and she did. Yeah. And that person,
he or she, I
thought it was she.
kind of egged him on to commit suicide.
That's right. It was her boyfriend or something.
Situation.
And there's a movie about it now.
Yeah, it's super sad, but I mean, it's like, holy shit.
Yep.
Right?
Others felt, regardless of her behavior, Mac Herring had taken the decision to kill her and carried it out under his own free will.
Damn.
When the sanity trial commenced, the letter that Betty Williams had written before her murder was presented as evidence. I mean, that's kind of huge.
Yeah. Burnett
called her friends to the stand, who testified Betty had told them she wanted to die and she had asked many of them to kill her.
Okay.
So he wasn't her first. His final witness was a local psychiatrist, Dr. Marvin Grease, who testified that Mac Harrington was suffering from gross stress disorder at the time of the killing. The stress on him from Betty repeatedly asking him to kill her had affected his ability to reason, he told the court, and therefore he did not know what he was doing when he shot and killed her. On February 24th, 1962.
Okay. Real quick.
Yeah.
Keep the 1962 there. The insanity thing, I'm like,
it's not. It's a different. It's temporary insanity.
A strategy, but I'm like, how do you go insane in like?
Well, if she'd been bugging him for weeks on end, which we don't know how long she was asking him to do this. If she was asking her friends, she was probably asking him at the same time.
I don't know. Like, you have to do this. You have to do this. You have to.
I need you to do this. I need you. I'm begging you to do this.
You don't love me.
If you ever cared about me,
imagine that.
You would make me. You would do what I'm asking you to do.
1961 was.
And they're kids.
Yeah.
You know, you don't know.
How old was he again?
He was younger than her. He was a year younger than her.
Okay, so she was 16, 17. He was
16. 15, 16, somewhere around there.
Oh, that's creepy. It's not creepy. It's just crazy.
So on February 24th, 1962, the jury returned their verdict. They found Mac Herring innocent of murdering Betty Williams on the grounds of temporary insanity. So it worked.
But yeah.
Excuse me.
Did he have to go to an insane asylum?
I don't think so, because they said temporary insanity.
Yeah.
So he's got his wherewithal back. But it doesn't say. It does say that little was known about Mark Herring after his trial, but the stories of Betty's ghost continue in and around Odessa High School. Whether or not she really did want her ex-boyfriend to end her life, or if it was an attempt to gain his attention and hopefully his affection, once again, we'll never know. The myth of her spirit roaming the halls and in school auditoriums where she loved to be is something her friends say would have pleased her. There's a part of me that kind of laughs and thinks Betty would have loved that she made her mark. So when I was looking, and I told you there was a Texas Monthly. So there were the kids, what they do is they drive up to the school and they park in front of the auditorium, and apparently they sit there to wait and see the ghost of Betty. Okay. And according to legend, she would appear at the window of the school auditorium at midnight, provided that the students flashed their headlights 3 times and honked their horns and called out her names.
So we should try it. We got to find. This is in Katy, Texas, right?
No, Odessa.
Odessa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Odessa, Texas.
No, that's a different. That was a story we did the other night. Sorry. Yeah.
So they do say, like, and there are, like most ghost stories, there are different things that people say. Oh, she fell off a ladder putting up something for a play, and she fell and broke her neck. Or, you know, there's a bunch of other tall tales that go along with her death. But really, literally, this is what happened to her. It's kind of crazy, right?
Yep.
And I could see how she could haunt the school after that.
Yeah.
That was like her important place.
Absolutely.
So it doesn't say, and the kid was really good looking. Like they show his, they show his pictures. Like the day that he won the trial, he's very, very handsome.
He's a handsome.
He's hugging his mom probably after they came back with the verdict of not guilty.
Yeah. I'll post the pictures out too. You can check us out. the.castro.files on Instagram. Follow the YouTube channel. Yeah. The Castro Files.
Subscribe and like us.
All that out there. You can follow it. What do you guys think of these stories? They're creepy.
And you can send us stories. If you know creepy stories.
Yeah, if you know of something, you come across
send them. Yeah.
We love hearing, we love reading, talking about creepy stories. We've traveled all over trying to find like cool things in Jerome, Arizona, and like
Flagstaff and Estes Park and
We've
San
done
Francisco.
A lot of cool things.
Yeah.
Alcatraz. We even did the Alcatraz one.
Yep.
You know, years and years ago. So lots of cool stories out there. Thank you, honey. That was an awesome one.
Thanks. That was fun.
This is Beth's show.
Well, it's our show.
It's our show, but it's your show.
It's just
because it's
titled.
The name is the Castro Files. Thank you guys for tuning in tonight, listening to a couple of creepy stories,
ghostly
right?
stories.
Hope you guys enjoyed them. We'll be back on. We're debating on when to drop them, but I think we're gonna do.
We haven't decided yet.
I think
you're pushing for Sundays. I'm pushing for Mondays. We'll figure it out.
Test the waters.
But we will be back with another one in a week.
Next week.
Yep.
So cheers. Thank you guys so much for hanging out. It's been awesome. I love you, honey.
I love you, babe.
It's fun. Let's keep telling scary stories. Keep getting freaked out.
Keep it spooky,
Keep
peeps.
it creepy. See you later.
Bye, guys.
Cheers.